Hello, you guys. Today's brief lecture is going to continue on chapter one of self awareness and hone in and really focus on this idea of our attitudes towards change. And so there's two different areas that we're going to look at of kind of how we feel about change and assessing yourself. And I apologize if you hear the lawnmower behind me. Because obviously we couldn't wait 10 more minutes to mow the lawn. All right, so hopefully it won't be by my window the whole lecture, but I do apologize. And I guess I could stop, but I'm not going to. Point I'm going to make. All right, so the first part of kind of our attitude towards change is just recognizing that if right now, if you assess yourself and you do not like change, um, that's a hurdle that you're going to want to work on to overcome. Because you can see on the screen here, graduates of management schools today will face an environment unlike any person has ever experienced before. And really, this is just alluding to the fact that our environment is always changing. And so if we look at different industries, there's obviously some industries that have a more stable environment over others, but really that's not the norm. The norm is that we're in these environments that need to be very flexible and adapt to these changes, whether it's changes in regulations, changes in customer demands, changes in products and services, whatever it might be. This change is always happening, and so we want to be okay with it. We want to be able to accept it and really be able to thrive in those types of environments. So the first assessment looked at kind of your change orientation in terms of your tolerance for ambiguity or your tolerance for unclear situations. All right, and so that's what tolerance of ambiguity is measuring, the extent to which individuals are comfortable coping with unclear situations. So it's kind of interesting to think about change. When I think about change, typically I'm okay with it. It's kind of exciting to change jobs or try something new, that type of thing. But when it's sprung on you when you're not expecting it, what is that reaction? So when I am in control and I make those decisions that I'm going to change jobs or I'm going to change something, right? It's a little different because I'm controlling that. I made that decision, and so it's still it's scary, to maybe do these things. But think about, how do you react when something changes outside of your control? And so for an example of that for me was years ago, my husband got laid off. And that wasn't something we were expecting. And it was really scary at first. And so, how do you deal with those unclear situations? Right. And so our initial reaction was like, what are we going to do? Type of thing. But after we got over that initial reaction, we went into action. We started, okay, this is what we're going to do. So my husband started looking at maybe getting into a different field. And it kind of got exciting after that, to think about all these new possibilities that kind of presented itself with that change. And so I think, for us, I thought we handled it pretty well. We got excited. We started, taking action, trying to take control of this very unclear situation. Other people, if you just kind of sit back and freeze, or not do much, that's not kind of the reaction probably that's best, right? And sometimes it works out. And in our case, we did all these things, got really excited, and he started applying for different places and talking and making these connections. And then he actually got his job back. A certain amount of people were hired back, after that layoff. So it worked out that we didn't really have to do anything, but instead of just stressing and, crossing our fingers, how do you deal with those situations, right? So that really put us to the test to really see, how do you deal with those situations? So that gives you a better sense of yourself. And then obviously the more you're put into those situations, the better you're going to be able to cope with them, right? As you gain experience and you recognize, things are gonna be okay. Like I can't just sit back and cross my fingers, but you know, trying to, how do I gain back some of that control? How do I get somewhat proactive when this change occurs, right? And how do I support that change, right? Those are all things that we want to kind of think about. The other change orientation is this idea of our locus of control. And this kind of goes into how we deal with change, depending on kind of maybe where our locus of control lies. The locus of control is the attitude people develop regarding the extent to which they control their own destinies. So this was, again, an assessment that you took, and it identified whether you have an internal locus of control or an external locus of control. If you're someone that has an internal locus of control, this looks at the fact that you feel like you're in control, you're the cause of what's happening. Okay, so you know, you can see up on the screen, I was the cause of the success or failure. Right? So I did this, and that's why that happened. If I have an external locus of control, then I tend to push things onto other people or other things, right? So you can see someone else caused the success or failure. So if you look at a promotion, you know, if I have an internal locus of control, I got the promotion because I worked on this project, I volunteered for that role, I worked hard, whatever it might be, right? I did these things, and that's why I got the promotion. That's kind of more of this internal locus of control kind of mindset. External locus of control would say, I got the promotion because I was at the right place at the right time, or because it was luck, you know, and I kind of push the reasons onto other people, other things. Okay, and I don't really kind of take that responsibility. If we think about locus of control, you can see where an internal locus of control sounds better, right? So if you have an external locus of control, again, these are all things that I can work on and try to develop, right? So if we look at this example, as students, you fall asleep in class, right? You're in a class and it's boring and it's hot in this classroom, right? And so it's hard to keep your eyes open. All right, it's early in the morning. I mean, it's all the factors going against you. So in that situation, whose fault is it? Whose fault is it that you fall asleep in class? All right, if you say, it's my fault that I fall asleep at class, then you have more of this internal locus of control. If you say, you know, it's not my fault, it's the boring instructor, it's the fact that it's a sauna in here, it's the fact that it's 8 o'clock in the morning, and who would have class at 8 o'clock in the morning, right? It's all these other reasons. Those are the reasons why I fall asleep. It's not my fault, right? It's all these other things that would lead to more of this external locus of control. As much as they might be true, right? That's fine, right? The heat of the room, the early morning, those are all factors that do, you know, fall into maybe why you're falling asleep, but it's still kind of this more external locus of control kind of thought. Now, as the instructor, if I'm looking out and I'm seeing my students falling asleep, and I look at them and I think, it's not my fault they're falling asleep, you know, it's their fault, right? Then again, I have a more external locus of control. I'm not taking responsibility of that. Or maybe I say, they're falling asleep because it's hot. They're falling asleep because, you know, it's 8 o'clock, whatever, right? I'm pushing kind of that onto someone or something else. If I have an internal locus of control and I look out and I see my students are sleeping, you know, now I'm taking ownership of that. I'm taking responsibility. I'm saying they're falling asleep because of me. What can I do? What am I doing? You know, is my lectures are boring, or can I, you know, it's because I play in this class at 8 o'clock, whatever. And I take ownership of that, right? That's more of an internal locus of control. Whether it's true or not, the internal locus of controllers are going to take ownership of that. And the positive for being internal locus of control is that I'm going to try to do something about it. Okay. So if I'm internal locus of control, I see my students are falling asleep, I take ownership of that, and now I try to change that, right? So now, my students are falling asleep, I'm going to incorporate more videos into my lecture. I'm going to incorporate more exercises to get them moving, right? So now I try to change that, right? Because I feel like I'm in control of it. So I do something to change it. And the same thing happens on your part. If you, as a student, are falling asleep and you take ownership of that, you have that internal locus of control and said, I'm falling asleep and that's on me. Right now, you work to try to change that as well, right? So maybe you bring a bigger coffee to class, or maybe you get to bed earlier, or maybe you don't sign up for an 8 o'clock class in the future, right? You try to make adjustments, all right? Because again, you're taking ownership of falling asleep. And that's the nice thing about our internal locus of control. Both of us now are making adjustments to try to change kind of that outcome. If we both had external locus of control, nothing would happen. I would look at you and say, you know what? It's your fault you're falling asleep. And I would expect you to adjust, you to change something. If you have external locus of control, you think it's my fault. And now you're waiting for me to change something, right? We're waiting for someone else or something else to make the adjustment to change the outcome. Right, so you can see kind of how the dynamics of having that internal versus external locus of control and kind of the positives with more of that internal. Just some different kind of facts as we look at internal and external locus of control. Internal locus of control is associated a lot of times with managerial success, at least here, in North America. People with internal locus of control feel less alienated from work environment. They're more satisfied at work. They're less stressed. They have more position mobility because, again, they take that ownership. They feel in control. And so that leads to that satisfaction, that mobility, and that less kind of stress type of feeling. External locus of controls personalities or components are found in managers from Eastern cultures. They tend to use coercive power more than internal leaders would do, right? So they don't feel like they're in control, so they feel like they have to use more kind of threats to get people to listen or people to do what they want them to do. And they typically perform poorly in stressful situations. Again, external locus of control, you don't feel like you're in control of that. And so when you don't feel like you're in control, and you're in a stressful situation, it feels a little more chaotic and a little more out of your hands, and therefore don't perform as effectively. All right, so those are some examples and some explanation between attitude, to help you understand how you feel about change, and maybe helping you understand those assessment scores a little better. All right, see you next time.